Hello and welcome to whatever this is. So, while this is live, I've titled it what I titled it because I'm not going to be paying attention to the chat. Now, I've done this like a few times at this point, and the first time I did it, I turned the chat off, but then some people were like, "Yeah, but we still like wanted to chat with each other, so I give you that option." But every now and then, I guess I like to challenge myself and pulling from my library of experiences with a deck that I don't usually. It's not that I don't connect to it super well. It's like it has a lot of things that I'm using the Mystical Shaman Oracle cards and the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit. So if you've watched me, you know why I'm saying what I'm saying and I'm using these decks. But I've wanted to do it for a little bit just to challenge myself to sort of like think, feel, pull from whatever, and then we'll go from there. It might be something, it might be nothing, it might just be a fun little experiment. You know what I mean? Who knows? All I know is that it's warm and it was so cool for so long, but it's nice. I went for a little walk today, and it's like we're firmly in the autumn season. Leaves are changing, falling, and ooh, the cheetah and the serpent, sea serpent. Cheetah and sea serpent feels like something is like sea serpent feels secure. 1 second. And cheetah is quick. So it feels like it's like something that's coming to a quick, almost reads as conclusion, but it's not. Because I was thinking about the Mars retrograde earlier today as when I was on my walk. And something about it felt very like if we took advantage of everything that Mars had to offer while it was direct, then it's almost like we've set everything up to almost run itself while Mars retrogrades. So it can almost be an energy where it's like all you got to do is continue to flow with whatever you set up if you set yourself up in a good position, or if that's just how life works. And so it isn't necessarily like not doing anything, but it does feel like it could be a little cruise control, right? Like there isn't much to do. Ooh, the buffalo and the dragon. I don't often see the dragon in this deck, so whenever it makes an appearance, I get really excited. I've had this deck for almost 4 years now, and I've seen the dragon a handful of times. I've also been hearing like a lot of trains lately. I think I mentioned that in the last one. I'm gonna give this one more shuffle, and we're gonna get right into it. That was quick. There's like one card in each deck in particular that I'm kind of sort of hoping will come out. But of course, you know, the first card that comes out is Wild Woman with Beauty way at the bottom of the deck and Fire behind that. Wild Woman has always sort of been, she's just the one who doesn't fit into sort of like norms or follow what like a woman is supposed to do. She's a woman of her own heart, a woman of her own mind. And it's interesting because I had a dream the other day that there was an energy that was perceived as feminine, but it wasn't feminine. And the dream was extra weird because, like, I don't know what it was. But it was just like, this isn't like a feminine energy. It's not feminine. I don't think is the wild woman not feminine? We'll see. Let's get an animal. What animal spirit is the wild woman embodied? It's dragonfly. Dragonfly is easy. Well, the book says it's ancient wisdom, knowledge, and stuff like that. They've been around for a while. But there's something about an almost omnidirectionality that a dragonfly has. And there's something about like the precision in which it like moves and flies. And so with Wild Woman, there's this energy that exists outside of what is almost predetermined. Or there's an energy that exists outside of what is predestined. There's an energy that exists outside of flow. The wild woman is very much so the one who marches to the beat of her own drum, right? And the dragonfly can fly in any direction. It's almost like it doesn't matter in which direction the wind is blowing, how strong it's blowing. The dragonfly can get to wherever it's going. Bottom of the deck over here is the stingray. So the beauty way and the stingray, they rhyme, right? But the beauty way and the stingray, I like this because of the energy centers on the stingray. There's something that it's like her own alignment opens up for her. And it does, like, because the heart is upside down, it feels like there's something that's almost like fundamentally different about her. And that's something that came out in a few of the wells yesterday. And I guess the further into the age of Aquarius we get, the more we might start to see that. It's how, I don't want to say it's the intent that we're all created with, but it's how whatever makes us unique and individual. It's stepping more fully into that. And I think there will come a point in time in humanity when we can realize that uniqueness and individuality doesn't make us, like, our differences don't have to separate or segregate us. Or we don't have to utilize differences to do that to each other. I kind of want to, because of that, I'm trying not to knock the camera over. Oh, wait. Oof. I'll go for both of them. That upside down heart makes me think of spades, right? So I reached for the diceology, but then I was like, oh, I also have the fortune telling cards, and those cards can be rough, but since we're not necessarily, since we're taking a little bit more liberties, it might not necessarily have to be as rough. And I like to read books. I mean, if y'all watch me, y'all know, like, I like to read the books as well. I like to tap into what other people bring to the table, different interpretations and stuff like that. But also at the same time, sometimes I like to just sort of see or go off of what it really means to me. And it's not that, like, I just like to do it. I don't have to explain it, right? So there's this woman who brings her own cadence, and she brings her own. You know what I love about a woman that brings her own cadence? It's that, because it's like there's this seasonality to everything. But her energy, it's almost like again, it's almost like it exists outside of time and space, but it's on its own time. And so there are things that might be like out of season, that she just like, it's almost like she's a trendsetter. A forced uprising, an ancient word that stirs ancient things to life whispered. The two of diamonds. And then let's see what we got over here. A forced uprising has always, not always, a forced uprising feels like two tectonic plates that collide and then a mountain results somehow from it. It's like when two things come together, how they're forced up if they meet with an equal enough force where one doesn't necessarily overcome the other. But it's never necessarily felt um, like germination or like little seedlings sort of popping up out of the earth. And it kind of is today. The nine of spades and the six of spades with the ace of diamonds flipped over in the fortune telling cards. First, it was the six of spades and ace of diamonds. Numbers 29 and 9. Is this? Oh, this is a mouse. For a second, it almost looked like, I might go with it. For a second, it almost looked like the shadow of a bear in the autumn. So there's something about, it's like it's coming upon the time for hibernation, so it has to get all of its nutrients in. And then we have this bird in the ace of diamonds. The nine of diamonds is the rose. With this being the mouse, I immediately think of the bird that immediately comes to mind with a mouse is an owl. And so there's this predator prey relationship, but this bird is clearly not an owl. And so with this rose, it feels like there's this dynamic, or it's being introduced to a dynamic where at first we might think that we might have to be on the defensive, where it's very like hostile and non communal question mark. And it's interesting that in this dynamic the burden almost falls onto the mouse to not see this bird as an owl, right? Because this bird is what this bird is. It's not naturally going to see the mouse as a source of nutrition or nutrients or anything like that. And it makes me think of the rabbit in the animal spirits because in the book, Kim talks about how the rabbit creates this negative self fulfilling prophecy about how it gets eaten by the eagle. So the rabbit is so far into the energy of its own fear that it creates a reality that affirms it. And that's an interesting energy with the wild woman and the dragonfly because it almost implies that wild woman dragonfly, it feels like there's a truth to the season, there's a truth to its cadence and rhythm and timing. But when we get entangled in the goings on of our own lives, or when we are raised in an environment and the status quo is whatever it is, we sort of start to see that as what is standard. It's almost like whenever you hear someone talk about time and the creation of the calendar and stuff like that. I think another thing about this dragonfly is the significance of water for the dragonfly. And the stingray is also water. But then we have this beauty way with the dragonfly, lol, with the dragonfly flying like above the flower. And it's giving lotus energy today. And it's like no mud, no lotus. The dragonfly's like the first stage of its life, it's submerged in the water. And I've been watching a lot of Wired things. Like, this is biology support, this is mythology support, this is whatever. And I watched one, I think it was the biology one, and somebody was talking about like mosquitoes and other annoying insects. And the person was like, there are a lot of annoyances that we sort of encounter, but if we take, I mean, quite a few of the answers to some of the questions was like, if we remove anything from the environment, especially things that we don't have a complete understanding of, it can have consequences and repercussions. The likes of a scale of which, like, we would have no ability to even begin to um, predict, but not predict, basically predict. And he was like, because mosquitoes have a larval phase, and they provide like the nutrition for like fish. Like, there are things that eat the larva of those. So if we get rid of mosquitoes, there's no larva. One of the sources of sustenance for those animals like would be gone. Also, a lot of annoying insects might be involved in the pollination and cross pollination and the whole plant reproductive process. And so now it's like, because plants are, I'll at least say typically immobile, they can't spread their own seed. So they have to rely on something or someone else to do it, to carry those seeds somewhere else so that they can spread out. And I think the same person talked about how the Joshua trees are endangered because there used to be like giant sloths that would help them disperse, because the giant sloths would carry their seeds however far, and then it would drop them off, and then they would grow. But without that vehicle, they can't really sort of spread out. And so it's almost like there was an environment, there was a delicate balance in the environment that tended to the natural expansion of verdancy, growth, abundance, whatever. And not all of it is due to human interaction, but for the purposes of this, if we get too far caught up in anything that is outside of ourselves, it's almost like how we can work against ourselves and not even necessarily know it. The Six of Swords and Ace of Pentacles compared to the Nine of Swords is also an energy of avoidance. The Two of Pentacles can be a space of decision making, and there are multiple things to weigh. With that Six of Swords being with the Ace of Pentacles, that's a choice and decision that might have repercussions that, again, we don't understand. I think too, there's an energy of how our frequency and energetic state can influence and impact the frequencies around us. And that's because of the stingray and the beauty way again. It's almost like what lends the wild woman her dragonfly like ability to freely move through space is her internal alignment with the stingray. but it feels like there may be blocks in certain areas for us as individuals because of anything that we can experience in our personal lives, you know. So that's the first one. Let's go for another. Let's see. I'll put these cards back. I kind of want to keep them out, but I won't. I don't know how many of these I'm going to do. It might just be two. Something might come out and I might decide to be done. I just saw the deer. I was walking in the cemetery and I was like, oh, what if I see deer today? There was a deer in the parking lot at work one day. And I was like, how did it get out of the parking lot? Because the direction that it was heading in was like fenced in. And then I was like, can deer hop over fences? Like, I feel like they should be able to. There is a little bit of barbed wire at the top of the fence, but I guess I would think that the deer could clear it. I don't know. So, who was the next? Journey and the Serpent at the cut. Journey and the Serpent is interesting because it speaks of the evolution of knowing, right? The snake grows so big, it sheds its skin, and then it grows and it sheds, and it's this molting process that the snake continuously goes through. And whenever the serpent fails to completely shed its skin, it can run the danger of like suffocating and all kinds of stuff. With what is it called, like stuck shed or something like that? I saw a video on YouTube about it. I don't know why it popped up one day and I watched it. But I know like there's somebody I follow, and he has it's not a gecko, but it's something like that. And she was shedding, but like her molted skin got stuck in like her nostrils or something like that, so she couldn't breathe. She was like suffocating. But yeah, it's just like perfection is relative, and we're not necessarily expected to get it right at the beginning of life and never change. Oh, great. So the Andean cross is the next card out with the curse at the bottom of the deck. So the Andean cross obviously is one of those cards that I can't pull a personal whatever from. But for me, this card is a seal. And it feels like one that's incomplete. Feels like something is missing in the middle. And the curse, it's interesting. Maybe, maybe not. I was going to say, it looks like this could be the thing that's supposed to go in the middle. But the curse is just like, it's something that can't be spoken. So again, like this is obviously for me, Flussa energy. Because Flussa for me is that like, something is wrong, something is missing, something doesn't quite add up. And we have to challenge our comfort to find what that thing is. But because we're not told, it's almost a self-initiation. And it's not that we necessarily get it wrong or that we can get it wrong. But it isn't necessarily that we always get it right immediately. And maybe there are multiple things, right? Maybe it's something that we revisit again coming off of the serpent and the journey. Let's get an Animo. What's another deck? I could use the mystical medleys because that's one where I'm like, what is this? But I was hoping for like the animals and corn because I'm always like, well, like I know that corn is supposed to be like abundance and prosperity or whatever, because that's what the book says and that's what people say. But what is corn to me? And I thought of what corn. Oh my gosh! Y'all remember when I saw the deer? Well, here's the gazelle. Shout out to the rare gazelle. Love her. Check her out. I mean, I'm like 99.5% sure if you watch me, you know who the rare gazelle is. But if you don't, if you somehow happen upon this video and you don't know her, check her out. Maybe you'll find something that resonates for you. I love her personally. She's awesome. She's amazing. This is interesting. What's interesting about the gazelle is this thing behind her or him, because what's missing in the Indian cross? And if it is the rare gazelle, if it is the reem, if it is that which is thought to be extinct, or, well, I was just talking about things that are extinct, right? The Joshua tree being endangered and stuff like that. If we eradicate annoyances, how that can lead to repercussions far beyond our understanding, because we don't, it's almost like we don't see past our own uncomfortability or our own annoyance to see how that energy benefits and proliferates other things that we do like and that we do enjoy. So that's why it's like a two of pentacles balance. It's like you don't like to be bit by a mosquito because it's itchy, but you love to eat fish, and the fish that you love to eat the mosquitoes in their larval phase. I don't know. The bottom of the deck is the crocodile. And then another card that I was hoping to see is behind the crocodile, but it didn't come out, so we're not going to take it. What's interesting again, here at least, I don't remember. No, the stingray was at the bottom of the deck last time. We get that fire and water combination again. We get a fire and water combination when the Indian cross is here and the curse is at the bottom of the deck. Now the Indian cross, it's taken on a lot of that like oneness or whatever. It's like there is no separation between fire and water, but the thing that makes them the same isn't necessarily easy to see and perceive. Crocodile is making this feel like some kind of like very powerful truth that isn't, again, necessarily super obvious or easy to find. And it's funny because yesterday, when I was at work, I saw an article of like, it was like there's a large crocodile that came out of the water to eat a smaller crocodile that was trying to eat something else. And with the gazelle being here, there is an energy of like it's something that can't be spoken, but it can be shown to you. It's almost like it's demonstrated in nature. It's almost like it's all around you, which again tends to that Flusa energy, where it's like all you have to do is pay attention and you'll see, find, feel whatever the thing is. And now it's making me think of Fringe. Fringe is an amazing sci-fi show. I feel like it's the OG in some ways, but again, I haven't watched every single sci-fi show, so I don't want to completely spoil it, just in case, on the off chance that someone goes to watch it, because it's really good. I watched it with one of my buddies, and at first he was like, "Oh, I feel like, I've seen some of this in other shows," and it's like, yeah, because they might have borrowed from it. But its story up until the last season is a whole thing in and of itself. It's still good, but it's definitely a departure. And then towards the end, they like bring it all back. But it's like there's this ability to detect things that don't necessarily belong. And it's interesting because that reads as the wild woman in that dragonfly. It's like there's a reason why she's sort of out of season, because where she comes from, she's in her own flow. She's like, her energy matches the energy of her origination, just like our energy matches the energy of our origination. If we're born and raised in this world, there may be some things that we pick up that might not necessarily be the best. Some of them aren't the worst. But it's just like it's easy to sort of pick things up when you are literally bred, cultivated, raised in that environment. And it's easy to hold a lot of that stuff and never necessarily have to think about why you do what you do. It becomes ingrained easily. But with this gazelle, there's something about it that belies. It's almost like its appearance belies its, I don't want to say significance, but it feels like it means so much more than what it sort of is in a way. And now the two of spades flips over and we get the back of a card, because I didn't pull out the card that flipped face up. so, so we'll see who that is. It's the Star. Look at this star, though. Isn't that interesting? There's something about this star that illuminates the night around it. But it's like it's so tight around this star. It's almost like if you zoom out far enough, because stars are pretty far, it might be easy to miss. And that's because its radius of illumination is so tight. I mean, it's a star, it's not the sun, So the card that I accidentally pulled out face down is the Ace of Spades. So two of spades, Ace of Spades, and it's the rapiers. The energy of the rapiers is interesting because it feels like it's only a blockage if they're standing upright, right? Like if they're standing upright, that feels like a blockage. But if they're laying on the ground, you can walk right over it. It feels like something that isn't too difficult. Again, it's like it's only challenging like when you're stuck in it. It's like a video of animals that are like jumping over hurdles or whatever. And then there's an animal that comes up and it removes the hurdle and then it just walks across. Or it doesn't even have to be animals. It can be like people. You can see a video of like people trying to do this challenge or whatever. And then someone just comes up and like does it the easy way. And again, it's like, it's like sometimes the solution can be so simple, but when you're so stuck in it or when you're so deep into it, you don't even necessarily see those easier ways because of how we think things have to go, right? It's like if you see a hurdle, you have to jump over it. You can't just knock it down and then like walk right by. You can't walk around it. You can't go under it or over it. You got to go through it. And it's like, well, sometimes you can do literally a lot of things that aren't going through it. Sometimes you have to. 9 of diamonds, 9 of hearts, and again, the 2 of diamonds. 9 of diamonds, an accurate depiction, a true-to-life tale, liquid light that carves its way through night. 9 of hearts, a blip of light at the heart of a black hole. Progenitors in a primordial pool. So we have liquid light that carves its way through night and a blip of light at the heart of a black hole. And again, we have this 2 of spades star that sits in the middle of this darkness. Like there is no confusion around it. But again, it's almost like its radius of illumination is so tight that if you're not right up on that star, it's going to be dark. It's like the eye of a hurricane but the eye of the hurricane is literally the eye of a needle. And now I feel like I got to pull before and after the needle rune. And again, the Two of Diamonds, a forced uprising, an ancient word that stirs ancient things to life whispered. And that ancient word, it's almost like it reads as there, like it feels like it's like there's a better way, but it's interpreted as like there's another way. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it feels like the truth of that energy, it's like there's a better way to do this. But when we have that flash of inspiration, because the Ace of Swords is here, it's like there's another way. Like, what if I do this? I'll shuffle it. I think I'll do one more after this. And then this won't be too long, which is exciting. One more. We'll cut it there. I'll pull from the bottom. O for Lagoo, Flursa, and Win. The bottom three runes: O for Lagoo, Flursa, and Win. Now, O for Lagoo has been. This is 62. I'm pretty sure the Wild Woman. Now I gotta look through this deck. Because I think the Wild Woman was 62. Something was 62 in this deck. That's not the Wild Woman, that's the Sun. What did Dexter say? That's not a something, that's my wife. Wild Woman is number 62. O for Lagoo and the Wild Woman. O for Lagoo and the Wild Woman. That's the reason why she marches to the beat of her own drum. That's what gives her that super dimensionality. Because she's O for Lagoo. Like, there's the Lagoo that we're all sort of like swimming and wading through. And then there's the O for Lagoo, which is like a super fluidity. Gives her the ability to swim through land, pass through solid matter as if it's not even there. And then there's that Flursa, which, oh my gosh, look, it's another circle. I feel like this is literally the Andean cross and the curse. Because, like, we see the circle of the Andean cross, but it's got this line through the middle where that hand is, where it's like, shh. And then win, which is like bliss and comfort. It's a win. Like, quite literally. And I love that Flursa's flow. Like, there's this flow in, again, it's like it's an energy that I want to say like supersedes, but the progenitors in a primordial pool is here on the Nine of Hearts. So it feels like that affirms that, like, it's just like there's another way. There's an older way. Sometimes the, I don't want to say the old folks. What rune am I looking for? Needle. Sometimes history and tradition has a sort of truth to it that gets lost. So, oh well, look at that. Needle is in between Lagoo and Tuartness. So remember how I was like, there's this Lagoo and then the O for Lagoo, And it's interesting because when is needle backwards? I'm pretty sure. Let's rewind that back. Right? So when is in a triad with Ofurlagu. Needle is in a triad with Lagu. And again, it feels like that affirms the like, and I thought about that reading, I think earlier today when I was walking. And you can't really see it. It looks like it's not really appearing on. If I take Ofurlagu out, or if I take Needle out, it might appear a little better. Can you see it? That like neon green. But it was the one with the curse in the lower world. And it was like in the lower world, there isn't a language that exists to communicate whatever is trying to be communicated. That was with the blade and some other stuff. I don't fully remember. But it's like when we reach the middle world, it can't, like, there's no direct translation in the middle world, but you can paint a story. You can give context, and then that context can be used to get at whatever that energy means. And then in the upper world, like, you can literally just say what it is. It's like apple. Like, oh yeah, like I know what an apple is. They can be green, they can be red, they can be golden. They're kind of like pears, I guess, but shaped different. They're definitely not oranges. But in the lower world, in the middle world, it's like fruit, sweet. Oh, speaking of apples and fruits, that's literally the energy of proliferation with the Joshua tree, how plants require those annoyances to propagate. But anyway, in the lower world, it's just like, right, there is no word to communicate it. That's why it can't be. I mean, the curse, of course, in some contexts can be malicious, I'm sure, but in this, and here lately, it's not. It's just like there's a lack of, like, there's this communication barrier that's impossible to get through. That's why we live life. We get more experiences. We see more of the world. We broaden our horizons because the more experience we gain, the more difference we can sort of interact with, the easier it is for high priestess energy to communicate certain things to us because we have a relevant or adjacent language, experience, person, whatever, right? Spirit communicates in many, many, many ways. Why did I go for the needle? I don't even remember. Oh, look, moving. We're moving. And then there's the ash tree. That's almost that Six of Swords. Oh, the Eye of the Needle. That's why. And what's interesting is, well, I guess that's not interesting. I'll take it back. Because I was going to say the Eye of the Needle is in a standard depiction of these runes, it probably would be closer. I was going to say the Eye of the Needle and the Eye of Wind are the same, but Wind is much smaller. It's not significantly smaller, but it's definitely smaller. And Ofurlagu, it's like, Ofurlagu is capable of taking a non self centric approach to whatever situation is at hand. Ofurlagu is able to sort of like step outside of its own annoyances, challenges, frustration, and it's able to recognize, okay, like bees pollinate flowers. It's because we have bees that we get honey, and it's because of bees that we can get gorgeous orange trees and apple trees. And it's because of bees that whatever eats bees has something to eat. It's not just about how I personally feel and how I personally feel inconvenienced. There is some good that is done, and it's like that's what brings those two wholes together in Flussa to complete whatever is sort of missing. But whenever we're so far stuck in our own pathway and journey, because that's what this lagoon towardness feels like. That's how we flow into a future. That's how we flow into our own personal desired future. But if we're so stuck in self that it causes us to be short sighted and to not consider or pick up or have those auxiliary experiences or those auxiliary connections that actually smooth and ease that transition and makes it more, not only more enjoyable, but it helps that energy proliferate and disperse. It's almost like it barbs against us. That's when our own interests can work against our favor because we're so blinded by what we wish to see that we don't stop to consider that there may be another way. Right? We're jumping and leaping over hurdles and we're trying to break through the briar. And it's like, yeah, like this path is full of like the thickest of thickets, the burriest of briar, and the thorniest of thorns. But like there's this one way to get to that castle that is like, I don't know if when the witch laid the curse she didn't see it. I don't know if the local flora just outcompeted this magical invasive species, or if the local fauna just like tend to graze here. But there's this path that gets you right to the castle, and you don't have to find a way through the thickest of thickets to get there. But again, it's like we can be so dead set on what's in front of us that we don't even, like, there are things that we just don't consider. And again, it's all understandable. Um, and so this Ace of Swords is actually, it's interesting, but that's almost the nature of the Ace of Swords in itself. The Ace of Swords is us getting some new understanding, some information that we didn't have before. And it's information that probably more likely than not is meant to help us, but it's not necessarily information that comes completely decoded and sort of like laid out and everything else. You know what I mean? And so, again, almost like with that High Priestess energy, if we don't have context, or if the language that we speak, because it's not that there's a difference in language per se, it feels more like connotation, right? Like if there's a word that has a very negative connotation because of like history or whatever, and we hear that word, we think it's something bad, but it's almost like it just is what it is. Um, and I can give a word, but that's besides the point. The point is we're too focused on one thing that we don't have the capacity to consider that it might be something completely different. And it's not that the information that we're given is bad, and it's not that it's wrong. There's almost a Ganesh energy here. Oh, darn it. I'll go for it. I was going to say I'm not going to pull one of these, but I'll just pull one. And it's Ganesh because of the obstacles. Ganesha's is an energy that can remove the insurmountable, but it can also create the impassable. There's actually there's an elephant card in this deck. What was that? Oh, that's the blank card. Okay. So I'll get one of these for this, and then I'll move on to the last. That didn't shuffle. To the last pair of cards. The Ash Personal Yggdrasil. Ash is interesting because of the Emerald Ash borer. Ash trees, a lot of them are standing dead because the Emerald Ash borer works on the inside of the tree. And I heard about it year before last, 2 years ago now, a little over 2 years ago now. And the person, because we spent our first night at a campground, he was like, oh, ash trees are standing dead. If you cut them open, you can actually see the path that the insect took through the tree. But because they're standing dead, you can light them immediately. They're dead. There's no moisture that they're holding on to. You don't have to dry the wood and then do all of whatever and then put it on the fire. You just cut it down and it's ready to go. And the medicine for the ash is the yew, because the yew is the tree that from the inside revitalizes itself. Oh, goodness. Where'd you go? Here it is. Drive. And what I like about this card is that, stereotypically, elephants are afraid of mice. But there's Ganesha with a chariot pulled by mice. So it's this energy. It's like, instead of allowing our fears to stop us, trap us, hold us back, whenever something appears, whenever we're made aware of a challenge or obstacle, we can make the choice to face it. And in making the choice to face that challenge, it's like that's us, in a way, expanding our vocabulary. Because now there's a whole set of experiences that we're open to. There's a whole set of people that we can meet and places we can go that those fears would have kept us from interacting with, experiencing, and growing and gaining in some way. The bottom of the deck is number 33, Guidance. And here we see Ganesh, Lord Ganesha with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The creator, the destroyer, and the sustainer. And because Ganesh is there, it's almost like there's this wisdom of the balance of all three. Or it's where all three sort of meet. Or it's an understanding of the play that they all sort of have and the role that they have, which again goes back to, it's like, I know that this is like an annoyance for me, but because of this, there are all of these other things. And it's not to say that all of those other things would get you to not make whatever choice and decision you were going to make. But it's almost just like, be more informed. Because then that way, at least, like when you can't eat oranges anymore because all of the bees are gone, you know why. It's not this unexpected surprise. Because you might decide that, you know what, I don't even really like oranges. I don't see what oranges contribute to anybody or anything. And so if I have to lose an orange to get rid of the honeybee, that's a sacrifice I'm ready to make. And it's not always something that affects, it's not always something that's so grand in scale. You know what I mean? It's being able to make more informed choices and decisions in some way. But a lot of that hides behind fear. And it's not that it necessarily hides because of fear, but it's because of fear that we don't look at, see, gaze into it. And so we never see whatever is missing because, we prioritize comfort. And again, it's not always a bad thing. That's why we have choice. That's why we can make decisions. And like personally, I feel like I've had moments in my journey where I've made choices and decisions that I might have made in a lesser healed, like as a lesser healed self, but the reasons behind it and the motivations were completely different. Right? Like there's a difference between being emotionally distant because of a fear of getting close to people and being emotionally distant because of there's just like an energy that does not mesh with yours. Right? There's a difference in like what we choose to sort of make ourselves available for. And we can do that again from an educated place rather than from a fear place. But that was one thing that kind of sort of like, there were a few moments where it got me, where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm making this choice and decision that I would have made. But I was like, yeah, but the reason is completely different. I'm making this choice and decision out of self respect, not fear. Or I'm making this choice and decision because it's what I want, right? It's not what I feel like I have to choose. And I think sometimes, again, especially as people, maybe it can be really easy to like see someone making a certain choice or decision, or for us ourselves to make a certain choice and decision, and to judge either someone else or ourselves as like uneducated or unhealed or whatever. And it's like, if that's the choice that they want to make, that's the choice that they have the right and freedom to make, because them being a sovereign individual or you being a sovereign individual means that you can eat Snickers all day long, even if it's going to rot the teeth out of your head. And if a toothless existence is one that you're okay with, if it doesn't bother you, then do what you want. It's your life. That is your sacred choice. But ego might get us to see that, oh, that person's not doing what I'm doing, so they must not be whatever. It's like, what's for you is what's for you is for you, what's for them is for them. Not all of our paths and journeys are going to be the same, and not all of us are meant to be for everybody. But if we do our own things right, then we can all be happy. You know what I mean? Are you the last animal? I think it is, because all the cards are together. We get the owl. The owl that eats mice. Is the mouse at the bottom of the deck? It's the crocodile again. You know what? We're going to put them back and shuffle them. Cards have a way of coming back out if they're meant to be. I think, ooh, dragon at the cut. Okay. I think the owl that came with that crocodile, it's almost like what wisdom gives us access to. Because it's almost like it's that intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes, again, as people, especially when we try to preserve an ego or hold a certain image or be seen a certain way, we can mistake knowledge and intelligence for wisdom. And it's almost like it's almost like a shadowy Sagittarian energy that's like very well thought. It's very educated, but it's not necessarily practical. Like, it doesn't make good Gemini sense to do it, but it's like very Sagittarian educated. And it's like, well, I went to this school and got this degree, so when you're on my academic level, then you can talk to me about blah, 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 blah. And like the flip side of that Gemini energy is like, yeah, but like, you look miserable. You are in a state of constant and perpetual misery. Like, where's the enjoyment? Where's the happiness? Not only that, what you're proposing is full of flaws. It's full of holes. Like, if we look at the natural world, there are so many exceptions to the rules that you create that one would wonder if it should be a rule in the first place. What's the point of having a rule be a rule if there are 1,022 exceptions to that rule? What's the point if the situations and circumstances have to be so exact and specific to make that truth true? Like, is it worth it? And again, for some people, it is. And for the people who think it's worth it and who do it, that's for them. All the more, more power to them. But I think it can be sometimes like, and again, that's the thing about education. That's the thing about a lot of stuff that sort of passed down in thought and spirit, be it physical or spiritual. Because a lot of the things that we hear, or a lot of the things that we sort of witness, we do so, I almost want to say, in an unnatural environment. And if the environment is natural, there may still be certain biases that we hold that get us to see things in a certain way. And it's like, just look at the wolf and how, like, there are so many lone wolf, alpha wolf, whatever stereotypes or thoughts, but it's like wolves are also pack animals that are like super tribe oriented, and the alpha is the one in the back protecting those that can't fend for themselves. The alpha is the one that is in a position of caring and nurturing, not always the one in front. But again, see ego, see whatever image we try to project and hold or whatever. Ooh, well, we see a card that we've already seen at the bottom of the deck. It came out. Dragonfly is our last card at the bottom of the deck. Starfish is the last card that comes out. And Starfish is obviously regeneration. Starfish is also, it's an energy of like, it's a very Neath shadows nutrients energy, because the mouth of the starfish is on like its underbelly or something like that. And so instead of being like a plant and taking in nutrients and nutrition from above, it takes it in from below. We'll do that one last. We'll do this first, I guess. I didn't even get a chance to shuffle. The Queen of Hearts came right out. And it looks like a ring. It's the ring. I like the starfish for the ring. It carries an energy of like, it's like there is no, it's like a timelessness, especially with the dragonfly at the bottom of the deck. Bottom of this deck is a house with this barren AF tree because it's the middle of winter. I like this barren AF tree. I like a tree with no leaves, because not all trees are meant to have leaves all year round. But it's interesting because that's an energy of seasons and cycles. It's the Six of Hearts. We got the Queen of Hearts. It's an energy of seasons and cycles, but it feels like the ring isn't necessarily. Like, it feels like the ring is bringing in that timelessness and dimensionlessness from the dragonfly. Because it's like there is no end and there is no beginning to the ring. It is one continuous loop. And like, we pass from season to season to season, so it's not like it doesn't have to be an opposing sort of energy, but they just feel like they're not in the same space. That could be because of linear human understanding. The Three of Hearts is the card that flips over in the deck. So more hearts, all hearts this time, and lots of water. Where form and function align, the power of words to brighten and terraform. Bottom of the deck is the Ten of Clubs, nearly awakened hidden power, breath that takes the shape of one's truest desires, and a commitment to self. A commitment to self with the house and the ring right here. And then with the starfish here too. So that, it gives this energy. It's almost like no matter what we go through, no matter what season that we're in life, no matter what we're experiencing, we're always whole. We're always who we are, and nothing and no one makes us any less or any more of that. Because of that, it feels like there's a release from certain attachments. Just feels like it. And then we'll end with the mystical shaman oracle cards. I didn't get a single tarantula. Tarantula is also one of the cards. Tarantula was the animal I was talking about. Because that's the one where I'm always like, what does tarantula even mean? Like, what does tarantula mean to me? Well, for not only what it means to me, like, what does it mean at all? Corn is the one in the mystical shaman. Oh, goodness. Y'all remember how I was like, the book for Dragonfly talks about like ancient wisdom and stuff like that, ancient knowledge. Well, guess who comes out of the mystical shaman oracle cards? But number one themselves, the ancient ones. And the bottom of the deck is the crow. Is it Pepperidge Farms? The crow remembers. Do you remember how the ancient ones used to ride their boulders for miles and miles? Crow remembers. You know what's super funny? I've done this. This is the third time I'm doing this, and it's the third time I'm using the Diceology. This is the only time the Two of Diamonds hasn't made an appearance. An ancient word that stirs ancient things to life spoken. That's not here, but the ancient ones are. So whatever was happening in the first two, I guess it caught their attention, and they're like, yeah, you can stop whispering now. We're here. So with that timelessness and dimensionlessness of Dragonfly and the Ring, this feels like, I mean, because starfish can be regeneration and healing. If you break off one of the limbs or whatever, it'll regrow or something like that. It's like chameleons in that way. So it's like some kind of lizards and probably other organisms that can regrow something that is lost. But that in and of itself gives an almost fractalized energy, which is interesting when we talk about the ancient ones and dimensionlessness. But anyway, it's almost like there's this deep, deep, deep healing. It's like Dragonfly opens the portal, opens the gateway. Starfish energy enters it. But the thing about starfish is that something has to be remaining in order for that regeneration to occur. It's almost like one of those anime, I think mostly anime villains typically, that it's like if a single cell of this person remains and they'll come back, they'll regenerate. I think it might have been like a movie. You see them in different kinds of media too. It's like if a single piece of this thing is left living, it's going to come back. It's going to keep regenerating and regenerating and regenerating. The power of words to brighten and terraform. An ancient word that stirs ancient things to life whispered. So that ancient word isn't here anymore, but the power of that word is. That's like, this last one is low key like, it feels very like tower in nature because of the house that's built, because of the home. and it feels like it's almost like if there was a bean that was planted under your house and left dormant for who knows how long. But then one day the earth shakes and quakes, or it's like it snows in a place that it never snows, and when that snow melts, the water seeps through the ground, and as it, for some reason, the moisture penetrates to a level that it never did before, and that bean gets a little bit of water, and then you wake up and there's a giant beanstalk in your front room, and you're like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Like, that's why it's kind of tower-y. But because we've been seeing that word spoken over and over, there is a certain element of intentionality to it. And so it might be a little bit of like, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. But with the starfish having the mouth that points down, it's not, it's almost like it's not about what you wish for because the star is up in the sky. It's not necessarily what you fear and what you dread because the underworld is underneath our feet. It just feels like it's a depth of emotion. It's what we hold closest and nearest and dearest. And so it is about hopes and it is about fears. But it's almost like, see, but like this is tending to the first one and leaning towards the first one so hardcore. It might be because the dragonfly is here again. But it's like, if we tend towards disbelief and fear and despair more than we do hope and progression and healing and movement and advancement, it's almost like whichever we hold deeper is what's going to sort of play out. I'm going to look before and after the rabbit. So this isn't, well, I guess it's because it's a TV show. Surprise, surprise, media. And I talked about the rabbit earlier, being the creating negative self-fulfilling prophecies. Rabbits can be energies of proliferation because they breed like rabbits. It can also be um, fear because, you know, they're prime prey animals. But in the magicians, rabbits have the ability to to cross dimensions. Rabbits can travel between words, and so people use rabbits to deliver messages. But a rabbit can only, like, it's not gonna give a full like 15,000 page dissertation. It's gonna give you like a sentence. You might get like 140 characters out of a rabbit. You know what I mean? Because it's a rabbit. And for some reason, like, I'm feeling that for rabbits. And so, because of all of these words being whispered and apparently booming, because that's the power of the word, apparently, you don't have to say it very loud. But I want to see what energy rabbit is in between. I was hoping rabbit would come out today. That was the mouse, not the rabbit. Where is rabbit? Rabbit is at the top of the deck. Here's rabbit. Ooh, okay. Rabbit is coming out in between the camel and the raccoon. The camel is a balance of fire and water. It's because of the camel's ability to store water within itself that it's so well adapted to a dry, arid environment. It's because of the water that it carries within, it can survive the fire. The other card is the raccoon. It's the trash panda. What is raccoon? I thought raccoons had opposable thumbs, but I think we Googled it and they don't. Um, at work. A raccoon is an energy. It's almost like, was that yesterday? Was that the third well with that infiltration? I think it was. It can get into spaces that like you wouldn't necessarily think it can. So it's almost like raccoon has a resourcefulness and an ability to find and get into what it needs to sustain itself, and the camel just sort of like carries it within itself. And so our messenger bunny is saying, I mean, immediately it just feels like the end of some time is it's coming. Immediately it's like the sun is about to break. So like we know that you've been running on hump water for a minute, and we know that because you're running low on hump water, there are some things that you wouldn't necessarily. It's like if life were perfect and the situation were ideal, there are things that you would never do because you would have no reason to have to do them. But because you've been in the desert for so long, there are some things that you're starting to maybe consider that at some level would compromise your integrity. But it's also like it's like if you've had to do something that compromises your integrity because you were in whatever situation for as long as you were in that situation. Again, it's like the things that we do and say it matters. And while those things don't necessarily define us in a way that we necessarily have to permanently carry, and I guess it depends on the severity of the thing and if a change happens. Because if no change occurs and the definition still fits, then keep wearing it. But it's like it feels like there's a laxness. Like again, it feels like there's an understanding of the environment and situations that we've been in, and so there's no reason for us to punish ourselves any more harshly than we need to. And there's no reason for us to keep ourselves in certain patterns and habits just because it's almost like whenever someone's like, well, I've already broken the law now, I might as well go and rob a bank and get some money. Or it's like, I'm already going to get in trouble, so I might as well keep breaking the rules. Like, I've already taken the first sip, I might as well finish the bottle. And it makes me think of, it's like, we can slip and we can trip and we can fall. But just because we do any of that doesn't necessarily mean we have to stay down. And like, I feel like, because I was in group therapy was that group therapy? Yeah, that was group therapy. And it's so funny because like I did group therapy in a semester where my mental health was like pretty good. So I didn't necessarily need it too much. And then the next semester I needed it, and our schedules with classes didn't align in a way for us to meet. And I was like, man, when I need group therapy, I don't have it. But I held on to a lot of the gems that I got. And one of them was because before my story was like, I might be depressed for like a day or 2 days or like a week. And it'll reach the point where it's like I've missed so much class that I feel a certain type of way about going back. And I don't go back to class until I've missed so much class that I feel bad for how much I've missed, and then I show back up. And that's when one of the people who led it was like, you can like slip and you can fall, but like just because you do that doesn't mean that you have to stay down. But I think the way she said it was like there's a difference between a slip and a slide. Just because you slip doesn't mean that you have to slide all the way. You know what I mean? And for me, it's like it was almost something that I had never considered before. Because again, it was always slip into a slide. And it's like, oh, so like I can have an off day or an off few days and I can go back and not allow the time that I miss to create this weird pressure where I miss more, even though that's what got me feeling the type of way that I'm feeling right now. Like I cannot make things worse. Right. And so it's like, if we've slipped or even if we slid, and I feel like that's a sort of, there's this thread of like understanding that comes in through a lot of these, but that understanding doesn't necessarily take away from the things that we still need to do. Right. It's like understanding gives us grace, but it doesn't necessarily give us whatever it is that we're trying to get. Right. I don't know if like, it's like, I know you really wanted this cheesecake, and I know you had to like run 5 laps to get that cheesecake, but since you broke your leg or since you weren't able to run today, I'm just going to give you the cheesecake anyway. It's like that's not necessarily how it works. It's like grace is like, I understand that you can't finish these 5 laps today, so I'll hold on to the cheesecake until you can. Or it's like you can run a lap a day for 5 days, or you can run a half a lap a day for 10 days. Like we can come up with a plan for you to make up for whatever you were supposed to do, and then you can get the cheesecake. Right. It's not like, oh, like you couldn't do it today. Okay, well, here's your A, 100%. And if we think it's that way, we start hurting and injuring ourselves because it might be easier to heal a sprained ankle than it is to run 5 laps. And if all we want is the cheesecake, then it's like, oh, I can put up with a sprained ankle for a few days for a slice of cheesecake. What I can't do is run 5 laps. And so it's almost like what happens is this energy waits. Again, it's like the bean sits under the house until the water or until whatever condition creates that stimulation for growth. It lies dormant. Maybe it's this breath that takes the shape of one's truest desires. Maybe that's why it's this, it's not weird, but maybe that's why it's this like fear versus hope type of sort of energy. Because it's what we most truly desire. And so maybe the rabbit is again, it's carrying a message of encouragement that like the conditions of your birth and the choices and decisions that you made in the past and whatever your current environment is doesn't define you. It can if you let it. It doesn't have to. And so it's almost like we don't have to leave ourselves beholden to those things so that when Santa Claus comes around, it's not like I want coal for Christmas because I did this and I did that and everyone else says it's bad even though I feel like it wasn't that bad. No, if it was that bad, then you might still get coal, but that's not the point here. The point is that like sometimes we might wish for coal instead of that train set because that's what we think we deserve. And we all just like we make the best of what we have. And some of us do crappy things intentionally. But this last one is interesting because it feels like whatever was like in the background, it feels like there's almost this polarity shift where whatever was in the background of the first one when it was the wild woman, like that's coming to the surface, and whatever was in the surface, it's fading into the background. So it's doing this weird like thing, like whatever, as it's flipping. And if it's water and it's an open container, it's like it might slosh out as it's moving, depending on how it moves. But again, it's like it's almost like a factory reset of the self with the starfish and the dragonfly and these ancient ones. And so maybe with the camel, there is a light inside of us that hasn't died, but it's been fighting its hardest against the darkness. So that's it. That was fun. I didn't get any corn. I had to go looking for the rabbit. I didn't see the tarantula, but I'm gonna shuffle these and get a final message, so there's still time. But that's fine. Again, it feels like this is almost the sort of theme that's playing out right now. But I guess it's interesting because Scorpio season starts tomorrow. And the cards that came out yesterday for Scorpio season weren't that great. Felt like a lot of tears being cried. But again, it feels like the thing about Scorpio is that it doesn't bring up anything that we don't know is there. Right? Like Scorpio isn't anything brand new. Scorpio is fixed water. Scorpio is that stuff that's been stagnating for a long time because we don't want to think about it, look at it, deal with it, whatever. It's just when it comes to the surface and we got to deal with it. But if we deal with it when it comes to the surface, then its effects can be mitigated. And if we deal with it before it comes to the surface, then it can be almost negligible. Its negative effects can be almost negligible. And we can almost see beyond it because Scorpio energy as an energy isn't necessarily I don't think Scorpio energy is inherently like bad, or I don't think Scorpio energy is inherently like trying to like make us cry and tear us down and drag us down into the depths. I think Scorpio is just maybe sometimes an overly eager informant of sorts. You know, the energy that we send out is the energy that we receive. The future is born in the heart. Ace of Hearts at the bottom of the deck. On the cusp of realization, a shared vision, and a quickening, the Three of Clubs came out. Yeah, as a Pisces, I love Scorpios personally. As a Taurus rising with a descendant in Scorpio, I love Scorpios personally. I love Scorpionic energy, lightning, and the beauty way. Ooh. That's that, like when she enters the room, her beauty just leaves everybody speechless, like, and then you gotta catch your breath because she stole it for a hot second. Don't forget to breathe when those wonderful things happen, and it might seem like it's all of a sudden because again, like that beanstalk that just pops up, it's like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Are you telling me? Oh, the beloved and the coyote. Are you telling me that all of a sudden, like things don't necessarily have to be as heavy and difficult and challenging as they were? And Scorpio's like, yeah. Why do you think I brought this from the depths so that you can make it a little lighter down there? Bottom of the deck is the Earth Keeper. Interestingly enough, the card that came out is the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life and the Earth Keeper. What is the tree of life to me? There were two trees in the garden, right? The tree of life and then the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was the one that we weren't supposed to eat. But it's almost like it's not because it was necessarily bad. It's very ignorance is bliss energy, right? So it's almost like the opposite of ignorance of the law is no excuse, because it's like, well, if you didn't know, you didn't know, right? If you don't know, how are you expected to be held liable? And in real life, human to human interaction, that can be tricky. And so maybe it's not necessarily about, it's almost like once we're made aware of something, then what do we do with that information? Right. But this is the tree of life. This actually, I started watching a show on Netflix, the Brave Ones, and then the Earth Keeper. I watched the first 6 episodes of the Brave Ones on Netflix, and it's basically like there's the tree of life, which all magic flows through, and there were these wise ones. Well, the wise ones were perfectly fine knowing and being so close to the tree of life for a hot second until they weren't, because they're human, and greed for power and all kinds of stuff took over, and then they sought to usurp the power of the tree of life for their own. And one of the wise ones, in order to stop that from happening, took the roots of the tree of life and created the brave ones. And it's the brave ones that protect the tree of life, basically. So that's like my most recent encounter with that tree of life philosophy. So then the earth keeper would be the wise one. Is it a wise one that seeks to use its wisdom to fuel its own desires? Or is it a wise one that seeks to protect that which is the source of all life, I guess? And the thing about being the wise one that seeks to take power, or the thing about breaking systems, is we never know. If we've only experienced life in a system, we don't know what life is going to be like without that system. If we only experience getting bit by mosquitoes and itchy mosquito bites, but we don't necessarily think of all of the animals that sustain themselves on the like mosquito larvae under the water in an area and a domain that we don't have to live in, then how are we to know the implications and impacts of those things, right? It's like, how are you going to try to take the power of the tree of life if you don't even know if life is possible without it? So you would seek to be a king, queen, emperor, or empress of a desolate wasteland in which there is nothing? Like, is that what you want? Because it's what you're going to get if you take the tree. But anyway, it's an element of interconnectedness, I guess. And it's to see oneself in the greater and grander scheme of things. And it's to realize that maybe there's a reason why certain things are a certain way. I don't know that reason. I'm just the dude. I'm just the dude that make the biscuits. Let's go for the animals next. Ooh, the zebra. The panther. The earthworm. Oh, who is that? Oh, goodness. So, y'all remember that well reading I did? And guess what flipped over? The phoenix. In the element of spirit. There you go. There, can you see that? There you go. Bottom of the deck is the wolf. And I'm hungry like the wolf. Do 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 do. The wolf is the one that watches. The wolf is the one that waits. The wolf is also the one that I mentioned in the beginning of the video, or earlier in the video, not the beginning, but earlier in the video, that is conveniently sometimes misunderstood. And it's convenient because it fits whatever narrative that we want to sort of like promote. Not that it's necessarily the truth, but it can validate a truth that we wish to believe. The phoenix, it's an energy. I actually thought of the phoenix as an animal or as a potential outcome. I'm like, what did I say? What will I say if the phoenix comes out? There's something about like being broken down to its basics and then from that point rising again. And so because of that, it's almost feeding in or playing into that energy of the spiritual dissolution tank or whatever, where we have to separate what is us, what is not us, what has become us. And some things we can choose to keep, some things we can choose to let go of. Again, we have the power to choose, but the power of choice, more often than not, the power of an educated choice comes with awareness. But that phoenix, yeah, it gets broken down to its base elements before it's reignited. And earth and fire actually came out. That was the camel and the raccoon. And I looked at that earth and fire dynamic. I think, again, it plays into that realization that we are not what we've been through and we're not our experiences and we're not always the choices and decisions that we make, although the choices and decisions that we make can, it's not that they define us, but they are a representation of how we interact with ourselves and with each other. And if someone meant to make a decision that that's a type of interaction that I'm not necessarily looking for, then, you know, it's not necessarily any judgment. It's just like, yeah, that's a no for me. Thanks. Maybe for somebody else, but not for me. The bear, the bear. This is the one that I thought was the mouse, but it's not. Bottom of the deck is the chair, the house, the empty room. Oh, oh, snap. Did a bear break into someone's home? Oh my gosh. It's the opposite of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Oof. But yeah, with that, and I think that Phoenix, again, it feels like it plays into the starfish and the dragonfly. That deep, deep rejuvenation. Because it's almost like that's what the ash of the Phoenix is. But another thing is, it's like the Phoenix, it's like the life cycle of the Phoenix illustrates and illuminates for us that the soul doesn't, it's almost like that the soul isn't produced by the body, because the soul, it comes in and it reignites the ashes and the body is reconstituted. Right. And so maybe it's you know, we come from the creator and we return to the creator. And sometimes some of us make that trip a few different times within one lifetime. The bear and the broken glass. With the bouquet of flowers. Oh, okay. Look what's under the broken glass. It's the mice that I thought was a bear. It's the mouse. I was like, is that a bear? Like, no, that's not the bear. This is the bear. I can see how I got them confused. The bouquet is sitting on a table that the bear could see through the glass. So it's almost like there's bear nip. Is bear nip a thing? There was something that enticed the bear enough. Something about those flowers. But when I mistook the mouse for the bear, it was because of autumn. Flowers symbolize spring. So it's almost like the bear broke through the window to try to eliminate winter. But there's something, I just started watching this new anime. It's like Parallel World Pharmacy or whatever. I feel like Shane has seen it. And maybe someone else has heard of it too. Um, but it's like, I guess it's like somebody who literally dies from exhaustion because they never stop. Times of rest are important. Times of rejuvenation are important. That healing is important. We don't always have to be go, 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 because then what happens when there's nothing left to give? And our hearts just literally stop because they don't have the energy to keep doing what it is that they need to do. And so maybe it is a little bit of monitoring our energetic expenditures. Maybe not monitoring, more so being aware of energetic expenditures and getting the most out of every season, right? Winter is important for the phoenix because there's when it returns to the creator, when it's non corporeal, it it's like it gets enough energy to like reconstitute a whole body. That's a lot of energy to suddenly instantaneously reconstitute an entire body. Like all that, and like if you think about a pile of ash and how much energy that holds, and then you think about a full grown, fully functioning whatever, and how much energy that holds, like the difference is extreme. But it also feels like there might be a cool down time on it's I don't know if it's like the ashes have to cool first, because I guess if they don't, then it's possible to carry like it's you can have a lot more lingering attachments, I guess. And so that's what winter allows for too, because then when the spring comes we start fresh. Besides the evergreens, they're always there. I forgot about these cards over here. So we get a final rune and we get a final whispers of Lord Ganesha card. There's the stankness with Dej purged, the gear. Last room, last room. Final room, final room, final room, final room, final room, final room. Of course, of course, of course. Who is it but the crocodile that's been lurking this entire time? It's the curse itself. In runic form, if you said Hod, you're correct. Bottom of the deck is word. What a combination. The runes literally just said, we don't see anything. We see so, like, our scope and our field of vision is so infinitesimally small in the grand scheme of things that we effectively see nothing. Everything is unseen. And if you think about it, the visible spectrum is like a blip of the entire, like from X-rays to microwaves to gamma rays and like that Roy G. Biv in between. That's like a little bit of it. There's so much that we don't see. There's so much that we don't know. And we're not necessarily expected to know any of that. But that's why things like faith and things like trust exist. That's why things like intuition exist. And then we trust our intuition. That's why the divine gives us the inside scoop sometimes. I think so too. It could play into this, like, it's almost like what we think we know of the world and ourselves and each other is about to be completely upended. Has the potential to be completely upended. Or maybe it's like sometimes we have to blind ourselves to see. And that goes back to like not being so caught up in what we already know of the world and what we've already seen, felt, experienced, and how we already know that things are going to go. Because there's no room for anything else. 2 cards. Number 33 comes out again. Well, this time it comes out. It's not at the bottom of the deck. And it's only 1 card. It's guidance. This is what we get. This is why we don't have to see. Because there's guidance. Bottom of the deck is energetic movement. I'm going to read energetic movement. That makes me think of Hemi and how I think she said that, well, I guess energetic movement, it's like when we move physically, there's this corresponding move in the energy. So it's one of those, it's taking advantage of the interconnectedness of everything to do something on this scale that will be reflected on a much grander scale. Physical movement leading to energetic movement leading to physical movement. So I'm not going to read it from the book. And so this guidance, it's getting us to physically move in ways that correspond to what we wish to energetically experience, or it's like it's a domino effect. Because everything is unseen, we don't necessarily know, like we would have no way of knowing what can come to be of anything that we do. We have a finite ability to predict, intuit, discern events and happenings because we have free will and the people that we interact with have free will. And there's also like his will, capital HIS will, like the divine will. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of wheels sort of happening and going on. And not every wheel has the same number of gear teeth. And not every wheel is the same size. Just like the planets. So, but again, like that unseen word. Oh, it's the word that's unseen. I guess it's been whispered this whole time. And if we're talking about enmeshed wheels, it's almost this energy of like nothing just happens. You don't just randomly wake up one day and there's a giant beanstalk in the middle of your front room, right? That beanstalk is there because thousands of years ago, when the 2 worlds were one and beanstalk bridges were a dime a million or a dime a penny, whichever one is more than a dime a dozen. When they were a dime a dozen, okay, and humans and giants could freely interact, that seed fell. And then over time, the environment changes, the sky drifts further away, the beanstalks aren't tall enough, something, and the soil means that they can't sustain themselves. So all the beanstalks die off. And then thousands of years after that, you decide to buy a piece of land and to build a house on it, or someone else decides to buy a piece of land and build a house on it, or somebody just builds a house somewhere. And then sometime after that, there are these changes that are happening in the earth that causes that long dormant bean sprout seed to be activated and then to germinate. And then one day you just wake up and there's a beanstalk there. But it didn't just happen, right? And that's the thing with energetic movement too, is that things don't just happen. They're preceded by something. We don't always have the ability to perceive what precedes, and we don't always have the ability to comprehend and understand. But it's not without cause. So, with all that being said, this was fun. This was interesting. I mean, honestly, I could have done this pre recorded if I'm not going to interact with the chat, but it's different when it's live, and then I don't have to sit here and upload it. So, I used to like pre record more, but then after the convenience of just being able to like go live and not have to upload it and sit here with my computer on, because I don't use it as much anymore. You know, it's the convenience for me, but it's fine. Yeah, so I hope y'all have a good whenever you see this. I hope you're acting willing to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I'm sure that the next video won't be like this where I'm not paying attention to the chat, but it might be. It's 2 hours. I really thought, well, that's kind of, I feel like it was like maybe like 35 minutes in, and I was at the end of the second one, and I was like, oh, I'm going to finish this in 40 minutes or less. 2 hours later. Okay. Well, again, it's like interesting times ahead. We don't have to be bound by everything that we were in the past. It feels like there are great opportunities for liberation and all the sovereignty that all of us have been saying that we have and are and want. And it feels like there are energies. It feels like the divine is drawing near. But again, one of the focuses, especially today, was like, what do we hold most true? Because that is going to be what has the potential to become a reality. And but that's a thing. That's a tricky thing about truth, is that you can't necessarily change it like you do an opinion. But truth is demystified through that guidance. But guidance that isn't followed, it's like, we don't get anywhere. If it's like, hey, go to, I mean, I can come up with, if it's like, hey, like, if you meet me at this place, I'll give you $1 trillion. And you're like, really? What? For real? And like, yeah, all you have to do is literally get out of bed, go to the door, answer it, and accept the money when I ring the doorbell. I am literally walking up to your door right now. I have the money in the case. It is yours. Ding dong. Come get the money. And it's like, if we don't get up, then we don't get the money. But anyway, I feel like I say that more often than I probably need to, or more often than I should, but maybe I don't, because human's gonna human, and sometimes we can think we can get a whole lot of something for nothing. And sometimes we can. And maybe again that plays more into the it's that unseen cause and effect or whatever, maybe not. Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair, but the universe is. Honestly, that's a bold statement to make. I am not going to make that statement. Because I don't know. But anyway, I'll see y'all next time I see ya. Bye.